think we'll make a start. First of all, thank you so much for joining us in this this workshop, which is around designing for dementia. Just a quick introduction and a bit about what we hope to get out of this session. I'm Lindsay Courtney. I'm the clinical lead for intermediate care and reablement at Home Group. My background is an occupational therapist with sort of 35 years experience in the NHS, particularly working with older people with dementia and also more laterally frailty is kind of an area that I'm really interested in.
Hiya, I'm not John Thompson as the agenda states. I'm Teresa Smith. I'm Head of Development for Supported Housing and New Models of Care at Home Group. My background has been older people, working with older people and housing, sheltered housing, extra care, community wellbeing for the last 27 years.
Hi, my name's Mark Henderson. I'm a director at Brewster By Architects, and we're one of the framework architects working with Home Group, delivering their extra care and dementia focused schemes at the moment. I don't think I was on the agenda to start with, which is good. It's a late call.
So a nice surprise. What we're hoping to do, and I must admit we got a bit of a surprise when we came today because we'd said we'd like this to be a very interactive workshop, so what we don't want to do is stand here and give you death by PowerPoint. We really wanted a chance to talk to you and look at maybe plans and really explore what the impact is of good design in terms of supporting people's independence, and for me, which I'll come on to, how do we really work within sort of larger schemes to keep people enabled, re-abled and engaged within their local communities. So we came into this and it was suddenly like, no, we want to do interactive. So we then had a bit of panic thinking, we can't really do that. But in fact, there's not too many of us in the room, so I think it will allow us to get into some of that group work going on. But we just want to do a few slides just to really warm everybody up and think about some of the issues. You can start.
As Lindsay said, we're not going to bore you with loads of PowerPoint slides, but we just thought we'd give you a quick overview as to who Home Group are. We're a registered charity, we're a social landlord, a registered provider, as we're now called. We were set up in the 30s originally to help workers get social housing, affordable housing, and that was in the North East, and since then we're sort of now a national and work right across the country, except for Wales. We're in Scotland and the rest of the UK. So for us, we provide social housing for rent, affordable housing for rent. We do shared ownership properties. We do outright sale properties, helping people get onto a housing ladder, affordable housing. But for today, I think the main point is that we do a lot of work with health and social care and deliver supported housing and new models of care services to a wide range of customers with mental health, learning disabilities, and as Lindsay stated, older people. So that just gives us a bit of background about who we are. So we're working quite proactively at the moment with a lot of social care commissioners and the NHS and CCGs right across the country. So what's keeping us busy at the moment? Lots of things, but mainly, as I say, we provide a lot of rented affordable homes right across the country. We're enabling people to buy quality accommodation and get on the housing ladder, and the people that are here today mainly work with health and social care. We work in a lot of partnerships, so I think that's one of our strengths. We work in partnership with local commissioners, we work in partnership with large developers, with local authorities to deliver great outcomes. We're flexible, so we won't say this is what we do and that's it, we stick with it and we won't move from that. We have a flexible approach to delivering services and accommodation. We're proud to be connected to lots of different key partners across the country, and most of all we listen to what our customers want and what their aspirations are. We're interested in communities, not just building something and walking away. We're regenerating a lot of areas across the UK, old schemes that need a facelift or need demolition and new build. and we're also looking at placemaking and shaping communities rather than just like a private developer building houses and then walking away and that's it, no community interaction. And one of our key features is that we really help our colleagues work flexibly within home group, and that obviously then has great impacts and outcomes for our customers. So our strategy moving forward is to build 10,000 new homes, and actually that's risen to nearly 13,000 new homes because we recently became a strategic partner with Homes England, to be market leaders in new models of care, to have 90% of our customers using their digital accounts, so we're helping people, enabling people to do that, and to be 20% more efficient, and that is basically what our strategy is for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm going to hand over to Lindsay, who's going to talk a little bit more about what our community wellbeing model looks like and how that's evolved from the sort of older type extra care model that's been around for some 20 years. Thank you.
Okay, community wellbeing. I suppose it's probably easier if I go back a step as to why I joined home groups. As an occupational therapist working for so many years in health, particularly in the community with people with dementia, I so often went into people's homes and could do a lot of work around how you understand risk and how you try and do some mitigation against risk. But the one thing I couldn't get right was sometimes the environment of people's homes just wasn't right, and actually that might be the tipping point that meant people couldn't successfully stay at home. And I think having worked really hard with, because I managed a range of occupational therapy teams across in Newcastle and Gateshead, feeling very much there's got to be a different offer, seeing health and social care really trying to work together in a joined up way to meet the needs of individuals, but sometimes just not getting it right. So part of the reason I made that transition into home group was really I feel that their strategy of how do we genuinely look at integrating health, housing and social care in one offer, and for me, how do we build and use technology within that offer to really enable and re-able people? And I think that's what we're trying to embed within our community wellbeing, which we're trying to say what is extra care. It's almost extra care plus. So what for me is the next stage in how we develop and build extra care. So for us, community wellbeing, and we have a number of schemes, I think about 15 on the go at the moment, of 60 units plus with a range of 10 years. We're really starting to say, what does that look from a design principle, but also for me, what does that look like in terms of care and support? So one of the areas that I'm working on is looking at where we've traditionally got CQC registration to deliver personal care for our complex customers. How do we move from delivering personal care in that kind of supported way? And I've come into home group and seen some fantastic care and support going on. I've seen support workers who best will in the world work with people, but they do to people, they wrap people in cotton wool. They don't always understand. I think it's really interesting what was said this morning around understanding that people have a right to live with risk. So how do we equip our support workers to understand the concepts of re-ablement, to understand and assess therapeutic risk so we can allow people to make life choices? I'm doing a lot of work in terms of shifting our support workers to re-ablement workers. So standard practice within home group where we have people who are trained to deliver personal care in a re-ablement way. We have a model which we're working on, which is our support practice model, which is life, living independently, feeling enabled. And central to that is the premise, what's important to me and what's important for me. So we will, for every customer we have, work with them to really understand what is a meaningful life for that individual. For me, it doesn't matter if you've got dementia or you've had a stroke, you have a right to a meaningful life. And that's got to be about your choices and how you choose to live your life. So our community wellbeing is very much about enabling people to live in our communal environments with a real focus on re-ablement from the moment somebody walks in the door, right the way through the increase in complexity. And I think we've recognised that 10 years ago, I've done a lot of work around enhanced care into care homes in the Vanguard in Newcastle, very involved in that into care homes. And I think what you recognise is the kind of individuals who we will start to see in our extra community wellbeing schemes will very much have increasing complexity, and we have to be able to enable people to live with that complexity. So that's doing with our customers, not for. We'll be supporting independence as well as possible. One of the things we're trying to put in every community wellbeing that we have is a community connector role. So it's very much around how do we allow people not only to engage and create a vibrant environment that people feel part of and have control in terms of what that looks like, what groups go on, what activities go on, but also linking with the local community. And I think we're working really hard wherever we're building community wellbeing to understand what those resources are that sit in the community so we don't isolate older people. And I'm sure Mark will come on to talk about this, but we have commissioners talk to us about when you're building community wellbeing, we'd like a block for people with dementia, and for me that's an absolutely no. It's about pepper potting, it's about making sure that people with dementia feel an integral part of that community, and how can we support that. The other area that I'm really looking on, and I'm probably going on too long because these two will be dragging me off in a minute, but I'm really looking at what the assistive technology is. So when I came into Home Group, I think what we are, probably like a lot of organisations, we tend to be very good at putting a lot of stuff and a lot of kit in that we perceive as the assistive technology that people need. What we've not really done is always taken a step back and say, what are the outcomes we want to achieve through assistive technology? Are we putting the right kit in? I think it's very easy to get into putting in Tunstall or, you know, the well-known technology. So what we're doing is we're doing a lot of research. I'm lucky enough to have a modular home in Gateshead as part of an innovation village. We're doing a 12-month piece of research with Northumbria University, where we're working with the Professor of Nursing, Professor of Digital Disruption and the Professor of Assistive Technology and Independent Living. And we'll be putting a research assistant in there, and we will be testing and working with looking at how do we move forward in terms of having assistive technology. I think we're hitting a generation coming through that will be will be IT savvy, they will be able to use smartphones, they'll be able to use iPads and tablets in a very different way, and we've got to stop getting away from putting in kit that isn't meaningful and actually get more about wearables. So we're doing a huge amount of work in terms of what our assistive technology. We're working with Amazon on that as well, to look at how do we use normal things like Alexa, how can we use those things differently to increase people's independence. So I'm now going to pass over to our expert on design.
Afternoon to everybody. I'll just press that slide on. So my name is Mark Henderson from Brewster by Architects. I've been working with Home Group for several years now, and I'm just going to talk quickly through this extra care schemes that we worked on several years ago and how that journey from extra care through to specialist dementia living has changed over the previous years. I'm going to skip through these two slides because I think we're going to run out of time very quickly. Just one thing to note, we recently won the RICS Building of the Year in 2018, and that was for an Abbeyfield scheme in Bingley, which was an extra care and specialist dementia unit, which was fantastic because I think it's the first time that the RICS have awarded the major residential prize to a building which was an extra care scheme and funded by Homes England. So I'll just talk a little bit about the extra care schemes that we worked on, probably going back 15, 20 years ago. So they were a fairly basic model. Extra care schemes generally at that time were about 40 units in size, mixture of 1 and 2 bedroomed units, a fairly simple plan form, fairly limited communal spaces, very little focus on dementia living, whether that was specialist apartments for dementia living or whether that was cluster accommodation for dementia living. Generally had a fairly institutional feel. And what they did have in terms of apartments was what I would say was quite a narrow fronted apartment, but quite a deep building. So what you ended up with was a kitchen to the rear of the apartment, one window to the living and dining room area, one window to the bedroom area. Very little personal external space, so sometimes only with one Juliet balcony or a small balcony. And one of the big factors was with that, particularly in the kitchen area, you ended up with quite a limited amount of daylight coming through to the depth of the apartment. We moved away fairly recently, 4 or 5 years ago, to what I think are the much more common types of extra care scheme now, where we would generally get 70, 80, even 100 units of extra care in one block. And this was based on a typical hub and spoke development, where we would have a central atrium area with lots of fantastic communal space, restaurants, health suites, cafe type area, and then small legs of apartments coming off the main communal spine area. The atriums located around key nodal points within the development act as wayfinding destinations for people to move through the building. One of the things that we did have to be very careful with on this scale of building was making sure that we were controlling progressive privacy through the building. But this particular form of development also allowed us to have a look at engaging some fantastic external spaces where the wings of the development come off in particular locations, so we could get sensory gardens, public gardens, and quiet areas for contemplation. You probably, or you may be aware of the more typical form of dementia wing. This slide is based on the Fernbank scheme, which I mentioned earlier on. So this is part of a large extra care building, and is a dementia suite which is bolted onto the side of the extra care development. The dementia cluster has 12 units, and it has its own dementia lounge, its own dementia dining area, kitchen, assisted bathroom, and there is also a nurse's base station just outside of the main cluster itself. It also has a separate dementia garden terrace area, but it also has access to the main extra care development as well. Those particular individual rooms, whilst extra care development apartments have their own kitchen, dining room and bedrooms, the dementia suites themselves only have a single bedroom and their own bathroom facilities. So that's what extra care and dementia care cluster units have looked like in the past. So the scheme that we're currently working on with Home Group is what we're calling a dementia-ready extra care scheme. So what we're trying to do is to combine extra care apartment layouts, but also make them dementia-ready. And that dementia readiness will be flexible in both ways, so that we'll be able to change the extra care apartments, make them more open plan, or perhaps when people move on and move out into a more dementia-focused cluster, walls can be put back up in the extra care schemes. So I'll just move on and I'll show you some plans about what the apartments are going to look like. So these are the typical apartment layouts that we've got in the Bramston Street scheme. What's different to the earlier extra care apartments that I showed you earlier is that we've moved the kitchen to the front elevation of the building. So previously where the kitchen was located to the rear of the apartments, kitchens now have an external window, so the kitchen gets daylight. It can also be open for natural ventilation. Each of the bedrooms obviously have a large window, and the kitchen dining areas also have a full width glazed partition, which lets light come into the depth of the living and dining room areas. And we're also providing a large external terrace balcony area to all of the apartments. It's just a quick 3D view of what we're planning for the interiors to give you a better idea of what they're going to look like with the furniture in position. And there's the two-bedroom development. One of the things that we've been able to work with on the Bramston Street scheme is insetting the balconies within the depth of the building. So if we do get particularly poor weather or it's raining, because the balcony's inset into the facade of the building, people can still get out there and get some fresh air and not be troubled by
wind and rain blowing into the apartment. So some key aspects for the dementia apartments. What we want them to be is adaptable for residents' changing needs. So I've talked about demountable walls and flexible spaces. A big thing is for kitchen design, to make sure that people with dementia have cupboards which have glass fronts, so they can see whether they've got cutlery, crockery, foodstuffs or cleaning materials in there. We're working very closely with our interior designers who've got a fantastic amount of experience in terms of floor finishes and specifying dementia appropriate products within the bathroom spaces. And also being very careful about the quality and level of soundproof and acoustic performance that we have within the building. That's both for people making noise within their own apartment and being affected by noise outside of the apartment. So the idea with the dementia-ready apartments is that you can probably see some of the dotted lines on the plan which have indicated being removed. So we've relocated the kitchen to the rear of the apartment. We've taken out the kitchen internal wall. So we've opened the whole apartment up to be a much more flexible space. And one of the key drivers behind this is making sure that people with dementia can get a consistent view all of the way through, whether they're in the bedroom or the kitchen or in the lounge dining area, and they can see through into the bathroom areas as well. So a similar sort of plan there for the 2-bedroom unit. Obviously the 2-bedroom unit is much larger, so that also gives the flexibility of having an alternative bed space to the partial partition in front of the main bedroom area. So this is all about giving a flexible approach to the apartments that we're providing for residents. And as I mentioned earlier, it would be the case that these walls could be put back at a later date. Key considerations that we need to be very mindful of are drainage and services and electrical and mechanical installations, to make sure that whilst the apartments may change in the future, we need to accommodate those adaptations so that when we put walls back later on, we've got the right kit in the right places. And there's just some visuals there on what the internal apartment layouts are going to look like. So just in terms of landscape design, which we're going to talk about in one of our workshops, Home Group have a fantastic landscape person that we work very closely with. And they're very much about making sure that our dementia and extra care residents utilise all of the fantastic design criteria that we can get from the likes of the Sterling design guides. So we particularly want to focus on vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and make sure that our dementia residents have fantastic external spaces. So whether that's sensory gardens, whether that's mobile pieces of furniture or sculpture, whether that's planting, which has particular reference to smells, particular plant types which give colour and vibrancy throughout the development, and also to give far-reaching views when we can possibly get it as well, and also to attract animals and insects into the gardens. And finally, just a sort of quick note on the communal areas. I think I touched on earlier on the level and extent of communal areas that we're now providing within these dementia-focused extra care schemes are absolutely incredible. And I certainly think this is one that we finished about 2 or 3 years ago. The quality of the interiors is now probably the equivalent of a 4 or 5-star hotel. So we have these fantastic 8-room spaces in there with reception desks. We have cafes, as well as restaurant areas, health suites, gymnasiums, beauty salons, and assisted bathrooms, which are more like spa bathrooms. So that's just an idea about where we're going with the extra care dementia focused accommodation. And just a little note on some of the particular references I would give to the design guides that we're using at the moment, particularly the Housing Lynn and the University of Stirling's Dementia Design Series, which I've got on the desk there, which are our Bible in terms of how we deliver schemes for Home Group and our other clients. Thank you very much. That's it. So I think we're now going to break off and ask people if they'd like to come up and gather around the tables. And we've got a couple of workshops about external design and communal design.